Every story you love, every invention that moves you, every idea you wished was yours, all began as nothing. Just a blank page with a blinking cursor, asking a simple question. What do you see? Great ideas start on Mac. Find out more on apple.com/Mac.
This episode is brought to you by Nespresso. Gift magical mornings with Nespresso Virtuo Pop. Compact and stylish, Virtuo Pop is made to meet every morning coffee craving. From espresso to coffee, hot or iced, at the click of a button. And celebrate the season with Nespresso's limited edition coffee flavors. Sweet almond and hibiscus, cinnamon and candied tamarind, and festive double espresso. Magic in the making. Shop the holiday gift collection exclusively at Nespresso.com.
Two, one. Welcome to another Britflix.com podcast. My name's Stuart Wright, and today's guest is Jonny Tull. Welcome to the show.
Hiya, you all right?
I am. Now, you're going to be talking about being a new entrant into distribution through your company, Tull Stories, and you'll be sharing 3 films that have impacted everything in your adult life. And you, sir, are a very, very useful guest in that sense because you gave me pointers as to why each film was chosen, which is nice for when we introduce it. Does that sound like what you've signed up for?
I think so, yeah. We'll see once I start talking. Okay.
Right then. For the first section then, we are talking about you as a new entrant into distribution. So do you want to maybe say where from and why distribution first and foremost?
Yeah, I'll whitter along a little bit about the origin story.
Sure.
So I used to be the lead on marketing and programme at the Tyneside Cinema in Newcastle, and I was made redundant about 8 years ago.
Okay.
Time flies. And I did that thing where you say, well, I'll just do what I used to do there, but for other people, and set out on my own and have little adventures. And it was terrifying and scary and all the stuff that being made redundant does to you mentally. And after a few months, I was doing a bit of work with people and applying for jobs I didn't really want and wasn't going to get and stuff. So I did commit the freelance life and started to pick up work with some great venues in the Northeast and some film festivals in the Northeast. So big shout out to Dan Ellis at the Jam Jar Cinema in Whitley Bay, who gave us one of my first ever jobs, kind of helping the Jam Jar sort of integrate independent cinema and art house surrounding there. Just a little bit of work, but it was really, really brilliant to get it when I got it, and really buoyed me up. And a lady called Anne Ty, who used to run the Sunderland Shorts Film Festival, and Anne gave me a big bit of work with the festival to try and kind of work out how to get it a little bit farther afield in the Northeast and beyond, and write a bit of a blueprint for it, and it was really lovely to get that. And then from those two sort of bits of work, things kind of picked up on the film exhibition front. So started to do a bit more work with cinemas and a bit of programming here and there and things like that. But within that, there was a little candle burning for distribution. And when I was starting to realise that I didn't have to work under my old job description that I used to have and be the role that I used to be, and that I could explore new things, I started to think, well, I could have a little dabble in distribution and give it a go. So I encouraged a filmmaker to allow me to take a film out to cinemas, and we made our own DCPs and released it on an absolute shoestring. It was a documentary called Psycho Vertical, and it got booked into about 30 or 40 cinemas, and little turnover of about £15,000 to £20,000 at the box office, and all on little bitty bookings in cinemas, and that was the moment when I thought, well, actually, you can do this. You're allowed in the club if there's a club. And I realised I wasn't a club at all, and I didn't have to seek permission from anyone, so I just kind of cracked on and did it again, and then did it again, and did it again. Then the pandemic happened, and and derailed everything. But with the work I was doing with cinemas and film festivals at that time as well, it was kind of the distribution thing really fitted in really nicely because I was approaching it with the mentality of being a cinema programmer and not being a kind of full on distributor. So I understand like where I sit and where my films sit in the ecosystem of cinema, if that makes any sense.
So you could literally be in the shoes of the person programming because you'd been in them shoes.
So I'm not going to try and wind them up by asking for too much or expecting too little, and just kind of know that like if I'm going to take a documentary out, for example, that might be a tougher sell than kind of them putting on the Fantastic Four.
Funny
it's not rocket surgery.
No.
But it's really useful, and it's really good to be still working an exhibition and being a distributor at the same time and having a foot in both camps. So I think kind of I realise it's a bit of a secret weapon over the last few years, just as kind of even in like picking up the films that I work on and understanding kind of where they fit and kind of who might want to go and see them and expectations around box office and all that stuff.
So what did you find from your interest in film were the gaps in distribution market that you were able to sort of get into that weren't being fulfilled by the current climate of distribution?
Well, that first film was an adventure documentary, so it was a film about a climber, and I'd set up a strand of films with a local climbing centre at the Tyneside, and they worked really well, and audiences would flock to see them. Would do 4 or 5 big events a year. The cinema would be full, the bar would be full. There'd be families turn up to watch them all together, and I thought, well, nobody's really doing this, and it's really strange. Nobody's doing it, and it was before Free Solo came out, so like there was still no kind of there was no kind of place on the market for it. I think Touching the Void had been out about 15 years earlier.
Yeah.
But that was about it. And I thought, well, these films all kind of look really good on a big screen, and some of them are got really good stories in there. They're really interesting documentaries, and they have a crowd who want to watch them together because it's a band, it's a community. So it was just like approaching like that, and that's kind of how I took those films forward. And I guess more recently, sort of because I still release those films and work with filmmakers working in those fields, but I'm also like generally working across independent cinema and foreign language film and experimental and stuff, and kind of fulfilling the sensibilities that I have as a programmer now more than seeing an angle in terms of business, and it's a joy to do, and it's really interesting to explore because I'm nimble and agile and tiny and all that stuff in terms of what I'm doing. So for this year, the sort of recent mission was to recognising the fact that not many like foreign language comedies got released in the UK.
Okay.
Because the market's kind of left them behind, and they're a bit risky, and they don't travel often, and audiences kind of don't get them here. And so I've started to sort of pick up French comedies and released a German comedy earlier this year, and it's been really interesting doing that because the first film I did, sort of again, bear in mind I'm a tiny distributor and don't have loads of budget to splash on these things. The first film I did is probably going to end up somewhere between 75 and 80 grand at the box office on playing in 100 cinemas over the last 4 or 5 months. So,
and what are those films called? What are some of the titles called of these, the French and the German films?
The French comedy is called Oh My Goodness. It was released here as Juste le Ciel in French. Yeah. And the German comedy was called Tout the One. And it starred Sandra Huller, and that was Juste le Ciel was released in March, and Tout the One released in May.
So for the layperson listening to this, how does a distributor get their hands on a film to then put it out in the UK?
You talk to a sales agent about the film that they might have in their library or required for to pick up to take out the world, try and sell, and essentially strike a deal. And the deals I struck were quite small because they're older films, but still kind of big for me in terms of expense. And that's to acquire the rights in order to put them in cinemas and put them on VOD and try and plug them to a broadcaster or whatever you want to do, but all in the UK and Ireland. So it's kind of ring fenced in terms of the geography of what I'm allowed to do. So
in a sense, you as a distributor will go to the sales agent and once you've agreed that whatever the fee is to get the rights to sell the film, that's your gamble up front, and then whatever you can recoup through what you share with the theatres is how you make money from a film.
Yeah, so we get a split from ticket sales, and kind of that hoops the costs and kind of goes, and if it goes at the profit, fantastic. If it needs its own face, that's always good enough.
So having been the person that used to talk to distributors and is now the person talking to the programmers and the curators, what has been the biggest part of presumably what was a steep learning curve in terms of establishing yourself?
It's an ongoing one, actually. I think it's that the expectations you might have as a programmer from a little distributor like me aren't necessarily those that you'd have from a really established bigger company who you know as a programmer are going to put like tens of thousands of pounds into putting the film out at the very least, and kind of they've got loads of resources to put behind something and can afford like the get really expensive press support and things like that. So there's a whole understanding there's that expectation like, oh, such and such has released a film, so we know they do a good job on it, we know they spend loads of money on that film, so at the very least the public's going to have general awareness of it.
Yeah.
At my end of the spectrum, it becomes a bit more granular, and I think, well, actually Johnny's releasing it, he's doing it with a little budget, even though it's still quite a bit, still 10 to 15,000 pounds putting that French comedy out earlier this year.
Yeah.
But I haven't got like the money to put it on the side of buses or in train stations or do massive campaigns online. So it's all very granular and very carefully orchestrated, because it's about where you put a little bit of money you've got available. And sometimes that'll be on advertising, sometimes it'll be on hiring someone to do grassroots work with us and give us a bit of advice on a particular community. Sometimes it's about getting a really kick-ass press agent in to kind of just do some really good work on that and lead with the press rather than lead with loads of advertising. So there's a lot of like picking your battles within it. But because of that kind of scale that I'm operating in, and Tull Stories is releasing stuff in, then I know as an exhibitor, I know there's going to be a little bit less assurance in there about like, one of Johnny's films is going to be not the same as like Sony releasing the film or something. and I get that, it's a big daft ecosystem, and it's really important to kind of understand and see where people are coming from. It still hurts when you get a rejection, because rejections are never nice, but knowing why is kind of is it's a help.
So given what you thought you knew as somebody that was dealing with distributors, what's been your biggest change of perception in the role of distributor now you are one?
That is a good question. I think in terms of like the getting the film out, I think it was a shift in sort of when I started out. I was like, right, I'm going to get this booked at loads of cinemas and I'm going to do a bit of marketing. And actually the reality is you've got to do a lot of both. So a lot of the stuff I do, a lot of time spent on these is sending endless emails about lots and lots of different films to programmers. To the point that I'm sure they're irritated by what I do, and I would be as well. But then that's only half the battle. So the next bit is like, right, so I've told them about it and they've committed their resources to it by putting in a cinema screen and giving it space in the calendar. So we've got to then jointly go out and find that audience. And I think kind of where I think the big shift for me as distributor now compared to what I used to do as an exhibitor was I think there's I now realise more of an onus on the distributor to do a lot of marketing, not just provide the assets for the marketing. So I've got I always apply a bit of marketing budget against kind of everything I do, however tiny it is. And it's really do that whereas I think when I started out, I wasn't doing that. I was doing the work and I was the marketing budget. So I was going out and writing to people and kind of writing the climate clubs and all kinds of stuff and doing that and still do that. But now it's like, right, but you've got to spend like X £1,000 on advertising as well as kind of, getting your DCPs made and your BBFC classification done and all that admin that comes around it. And that's a big shift because as an exhibitor, I would always do a lot of marketing like for the films in my program, and we were a very prolific kind of little team in the cinema doing lots of work, and people run ragged having to do a bit of, one bit of marketing for every title that you screen in the cinema, and you screen about 30 or 40 films every month. So it's like it adds up, and I wonder kind of how many places do that much in terms of that, because all do a lot of work, and it's all like heavy workload across exhibition. But it's been a real interesting shift for me. It's actually, I've got to do loads of that as well, and kind of, it's not just about picking the film up and getting it out the door. It's about beyond that, and it's really fascinating because like every film's entirely different, and every promotional push behind the film's therefore got to be different, and I've not got loads of cash to spend on things, so it's being very meticulous about where it goes and being quite careful about, this much is going to be spent on taking the filmmaker around for Q&As, this much is on Facebook ads, this much is on publicists, and it's really interesting kind of working through that as a kind of, fairly young in career distributor, but with this weird kind of, I guess, kind of the weirdness is having been in the game for 30 years, but not being in this corner of the game for 30 years.
I suppose the big change would be, certainly in terms of marketing film, would be if you're at the Tyneside, your raison d'etre is sell tickets and get bums on seats to buy beers and popcorn and watch the films in Tyneside. So you would have your press, you would have your connections that you would hope would help share what's shown at the cinema. Whereas now you've got to think about that Tyneside or that the Whitley Bay one, but then also you've got to think about it in terms of, I've got to create some national noise, because if I can create some national noise, then that helps all of them, because they can point to that as a thing.
Stepping up there, so it is like that equivalent of like, well, in 5 years, will I be having a conversation about which bus sides I take? and I get to that point where I want to spend that much money on putting the film out, and it's like, well, maybe, because it's kind of, I'm doing stuff now that I never thought I would do.
But getting it reported on in a newspaper isn't, while we know there are paid for editorial that exists, and relationships between the big studios and the tabloid and broadsheet press is linked to what advertising spend they have in some way, shape, or form. I'm not saying it's all, not every film gets glorious coverage, but it's obviously easier because of that existing relationship. So, I think you've had some recent success with the film you're working on in terms of like Guardian coverage and things like that, haven't you? Yeah. So I've got the documentary Motherboard. We've got a really, really brilliant publicist working on that, and it's a really interesting film. And that the filmmaker has basically filmed her and our son over 20 years. From his first kind of, the thumbs up in the womb to in the first scan through to his 20th birthday. So it's kind of boyhood, but the documentary. Yeah, boyhood for real.
Yeah, boyhood for real. And it's great. It's really interesting kind of working on that, because it's a really fascinating story, and kind of, and you think, well, actually, everyone's going to want to run this in the press, aren't they? And it actually turns out a lot of them do. So we've had some like incredible coverage for it, and spanned radio, telly, been on Channel 5 News, kind of been in Grazia and The Guardian, and the reviews are, been fascinating for it coming through. Sight and Sound raved about it, and kind of it's all kind of like great just seeing that unfold for what is a very personal story as well. So working closely with the filmmaker, Victoria, and kind of think, well, this is really cool that you're getting to do this. It's hard work, which has really kind of been working hard to run around town and do all the press stuff, but the coverage has been incredible. And I made the decision early on with Motherboard in terms of that kind of where does the money go aspect of it is, and what that's been has been, well, we're going to work with a really good publicist who's going to work really hard and has worked on equivalent projects before. And we're going to put a bit of money into Q&As and try and take Victoria and her son Jim all around the UK to as many places as possible. And then kind of just do a lot of grassroots and work out who our friends are and do a bit of work with charities. So we're doing a bit of work with a couple of breast cancer awareness charities and on one-off screening days and stuff. So they're kind of making that work, but also, I guess, doing a bit of good with every project.
Yeah. Social impact there, isn't there, as well?
Yeah, there is. And the whole gig, the whole point of it all is I want people to go to the cinema and have a nice time.
Absolutely.
See something but
the difference there between, say, what you were talking about with your French and German comedies, where you're you're looking at a library title and trying to get some bums on seats in the UK that might not have even heard of it, is that you're now working with the filmmaker. So so then this relationship, which you wouldn't have necessarily had that if you were a programmer. I mean, you could. There was always the happy accident you could get the filmmaker to do you a favor, but this is you working together with the filmmaker to sell the film, isn't it? Not just sell the film.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I'm sure there are situations out there where filmmakers are kept at arm's length, but by a distributor. And I think kind of, it's kind of horses for courses, I suppose. But
I feel like in the indie world now, this is the one advantage if you can afford the time to do it, is to make yourself available to make your screening an event. Almost like it's a touring band is the film. Whereas obviously, if you were going to get, I don't know, Timothée Chalamet to tour, that would cost you an absolute fortune. If you're going to get Aaron Sorkin to do a talking tour of his next film, that would cost you a fortune. But if someone who's invested in the film in the same way as you are, in the sense of we just want to get people to get bums on seats and create revenue for the film, then everyone's vested interest almost becomes the same.
Yeah, and it's really important. I think certainly the scale I'm working at kind of, it lends itself to working closely with filmmakers. So that's kind of like every project I'm working on, whether it's a big foreign film or that I picked up or a couple things 2 years, I always try and seek out the filmmaker and kind of, even though I have to go through the sales agent to get them. And it doesn't always come off that way. And sometimes you just want to kind of let you get on with it. But sometimes you end up having really lovely working relationships that are really kind of quite tight. And it means for me that I'm pointing the film in the right direction rather than just coming up with something myself and making it up. and it's full, helping fulfill its destiny.
But the thing is, I've spoken to publicists before, and it's interesting that while they'll have their jobs, which is that's an obvious star vehicle, but documentaries like Motherboard are equally of interest to them because it's still about giving the press what they think will be interesting to write about, and that's always going to keep sustaining your relationship with the journalists that you have a relationship with. You can't, every single star vehicle isn't interesting, whereas other films outside of that ecosystem can be interesting for reasons that the Motherboard is. I mean, it's a bit like, I guess Jenny Finley sort of did something like this, didn't she, with some of the documentaries she's had. It's sort of the subject of the film becomes as much of the conversation as the film itself. Yeah,
and I think that's kind of when you as a filmmaker or your subject capture the heart of the audience and the press and all that, that's such a powerful thing. And I worked on a film a few years ago called A Bunch of Amateurs, which was Kim Hopkins' documentary.
Yeah.
And A Bunch of Amateurs kind of about the Bradford movie making club, largely all older people working in that club, making their stuff, and it's such a charming thing, but it's because they themselves are charming as well. And a big part of that release was to take the club on the road to cinemas. So, we did one up in Newcastle and kind of helped out with that. So I've been doing cinema bookings for the distributor and was at the event with him and the producer and moderator and loads of people from the Bradford Movie Makers Club, and just think this is just magical. This is kind of why you do it. And as I work through it, works really hard and kind of because I'm doing it myself, sometimes you get a bit numb to it and you get a bit like, I've just got to get all this stuff done. I'll do a really good job, but it's like not really doing anything and it's not breaking through the pane of glass. And but it's moments like that really does break through. I think actually look at how happy these people are. They've had like 5 standing ovations in one half an hour Q&A event.
Yeah,
and we had it the other night at a screen in Motherboard where I thought actually this is really lovely because there's a big crowd here and they're all kind of having a good time and learning a lot and asking great questions in the Q&A and that's why kind of being in a cinema with these things is really powerful. Even if there's no filmmakers there, it's a whole different ballgame to kind of picking up a film and whacking it on Amazon Prime and hoping for the best.
Indeed. Well, look, thank you for sharing that insight into your evolution from programmer to distributor. I I'll put links in the show notes to your website and stuff, so people can see what releases are going on. And we can now move into the second part of the podcast, which is 3 films that have impacted everything in your adult life. For Jonny's first choice, I should say, he describes it as his career starter. The director was a very precise filmmaker on set. Some might argue pedantic. For example, during Dominique's orgasm scene, he told the actor exactly how long she had to moan for. In keeping with the title, almost every shot in the movie contains at least one white object. It was the second in the Three Colours trilogy, mirroring the French flag, blue, white, and red. And if I was doing a video podcast, I'd be saying I can't see the poster for the film that we're going to talk about, as Jonny is sat in front of it. He has the Three Colours red behind him. I'm talking about Krzysztof Kieślowski's Three Colours White from 1994. So tell us, Jonny, why does this have such an impact on you, and why is it have such fond memories in terms of career starter?
It's the closest thing I've got to an origin story.
Okay.
In that I started my career in film by going very reluctantly on a work placement to the Tyneside in 1994. And I wanted to initially go to Newcastle City Hall because I was 20 and wanted to go where there were bands on and somewhere potentially cool and interesting. And my second choice was this weird cinema down a lane in Newcastle. And it showed weird stuff that I'd been on a couple of school trips with about 10 years earlier. and to see some interesting some episodes of Doctor Who, which is still stuck in my memory.
Yeah.
And I went on this placement, walked in the door. It was June the 6th, 1994, and I got bundled into a cinema, Get Rid of Us, by the person who would then go on years later to become my wife.
Really?
To get shot of us, put us in a cinema, and I was basically watching films all afternoon, and there was this really slightly iffy Italian gangster film called La Scorta. Was the first one I remember watching, but I don't remember much about it other than there being men in suits and explosions. And the second film was Three Colours White, and I just kind of fell into the screen.
Really?
And middle part of a trilogy. So the trilogy is about the three colours, the French flag, liberty, equality, and fraternity, and the equality bit. And all different stories, so not really linked other than kind of the odd little Easter egg dotting around. And I just kind of fell in love with this film and this kind of the fact that I was in Paris and Warsaw, but still in Newcastle, and it was just magic. And I haven't watched it for quite a while. Actually, it's been probably about 5 or 10 years since I watched it. And but it's the moment when the kind of slightly precious thing I say is the moment where I realised the world started at the end of my street and didn't end there. And I just continued working my 3-week placement, going back in the cinema now and again, but that still stuck with it. I was doing lots of invoicing and filing and all the stuff you do. But then I got a job there 3 months later, so I went back in the October after this June placement thing, got a job there, and kind of that was it for 23 and a half years.
My word.
So it was the starting point of everything.
That is amazing. Can you remember the tipping point when you watch? Because if you watch that Italian film that's sort of you've got barely any memory of beyond suits and explosions, and then this is the film that sort of tells you that there's another world out there and you've not seen it yet.
It was just it wasn't really a moment in it. There was just that thing of being transported in a way I'd never really been transported by film before. Because, I'd been to pictures, but I'd been to see Jurassic Park and The Last Action Hero and whatever else was kicking about those years. And I was not really kind of, I was aware of but not really into foreign language film.
Yeah.
And it was on the telly and sometimes I'd stumble across it. But I was watching this thing. I think this is great.
I guess it's,
I want to be whatever this is.
Yeah. I've talked about this before. It's like you didn't know you had your radar on and you didn't know what the radar was trying to pick up. and then you see this movie and you go, oh, right, this is what I'm meant to. Because obviously it's like music, like you mentioned music before. It's like when you get put onto a band that is from way outside of your normal comfort zone, and you suddenly go, oh, right, what, you could do music like that?
I like those harmonies. I like whatever this vibe.
There we go. There's our first 5 minutes, sir.
Hey, real.
Was that okay for you?
Yeah, as long as it sounds interesting.
No, it's good. It's good. No, it's these are the stories and why I chose to do this format, to be honest with you. So the headline for Johnny's second choice is formative. The many extras in this movie were reportedly given $1 in cash, a donut, and a film-branded T-shirt. The two zombie children who attack Peter in the airport chart house are played by VFX maestro Tom Savini's nephew and niece. Several members of the marauding biker gang are played by members of a local chapter of a motorcycle club, and their elaborate motorcycles are in fact their own. This bit is where the magic of cinema got broken for me, or the magic of cinema breaks the illusion of what the film is, should I say. The living quarters where the four heroes are shacked up inside the iconic shopping mall was a set built at the production office in Pittsburgh, nowhere near the shopping mall, which kind of blows my mind. I'm indeed talking about George Romero's 1978 Dawn of the Dead. So tell us, what makes this such a formative film for you?
It was when I started to really sort of understand what I liked about film, I think, and I'd stumbled across Night of the Living Dead really late night on ITV or something.
Yeah.
In the late 80s. And I was like, what's this? What's this like really weird black and white film? And why does it look so cheap? But why is it like pulling us into the screen?
Indeed. And, why is it amazing?
Why is it just, how come this is a thing which I didn't know about? And even I've been like watching loads of like late 80s rubbish video nasties and stuff. And, And I think it was like 19... Oh God, when would it be? Maybe 1989, 1990. I think Dawn of the Dead got reissued on VHS, like in a cut version.
Sounds about right.
And my background's kind of, quite working class, broken home, difficult upbringing. Not the kind of person you'd expect programming an art house cinema or being a film distributor or whatever. But we just bought a VHS player for the first time in years, and I thought, oh, I'm going to sell VHS, do it, sell the video and see what I can watch, and I picked up a copy of this, which had just come out, and I kind of watched it, and I thought, this is great. This is absolutely just great, and it's so stupid, but it's great. And it kind of, and I'd seen like Day of the Dead before then, so I was like, I'd watch them all out of order, but it was just the kind of, I'd probably like, it says really bad things about me. I like seeing the collapse of society on film. And certainly I went through, in terms of reading, I went through a lot of like years of picking up loads of post-apocalyptic fiction and reading books like Ridley Walker and stuff like that, and think this is like really, really interesting. And kind of zombies kind of ticked into that as well, that kind of reading matter thing. But Dawn of the Dead always stuck there, and I've watched like loads of different versions of it. I'm not like obsessive about it, like in that kind of way you could be with horror, but it's the one I keep going back to. Yeah. And I keep like thinking, well, actually, like it's so bonkers. Like the makeup's terrible, but Tom Savini's done a really good job in there, and I just kind of it's just the bleakness of it, but it's also the satire of it. It's the kind of it's saying so many things about shopping culture and kind of consumerism and all that. But
literally consuming ourselves in the end.
Yeah, and it's just so smart and kind of subversive that I just kind of feel to be enjoyed. Like, I think every time I watch it,
because obviously it's a much bigger film than Night of the Living Dead, and it's a sequel in the sense of it's the same filmmaker exploring the same themes, but obviously mass media had moved on. It's in colour, so that's a massive leap. But you get the sense of the scale, don't you? I mean, the Night of the Living Dead has got the sense of the world's gone mad, but you really get the sense of the world's collapsed in Dawn of the Dead. There is no one coming to help.
Yeah, because you see it through the eyes of this news team who kind of just up sticks and get out of town in the helicopter.
Yeah,
and you're with them for that first part of them documenting like the final stages of the breakdown, or whatever. And there's a shot in it where you literally see the lights in the city go out. and then next thing you know, they're off this wintry landscape through Pennsylvania, wherever it is, and heading out of this mad shopping centre outside of Philadelphia.
And also as well, you think about you think of the opening, and we think of what we went through with COVID. He even sort of picks up on the idea that we would end up being in a bit of denial. With all the people in the basement who instead of us admitting it and thinking this is a problem, we hide it until it can't be hidden anymore.
Dump them down the rubbish chute and forget about them.
Yeah. Oh, there we go. There's our 5 minutes. Well done. Yes, that's one of definitely. If I was doing it, that might well be one of my formative films for certain. What's interesting as well is that it wasn't until, it was 2 in quick succession, but if you think, what was it, 1968 was Night of the Living Dead. The rules of zombies didn't change until 2002 when 28 Days Later came out, and then 2004 is Zack Snyder's high-octane remake, is the only way to describe it, I suppose. Which is a good film in itself, but it's not...
probably his best one, to be honest.
Yeah. It's the most coherent, I suppose. It's not just... It's got...
That's the James Gunn effect, though.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. That's probably true, yeah. Right. That's right. Yeah. I guess, was that his first one out of... That would have been his first one out of trauma, wouldn't it, I suppose?
I think so.
Possibly.
Maybe.
I won't quote myself on it. But anyway... For your final choice, you've simply dubbed this as British. I read that Peter Sellers stated that this was the first real film he made. He said, I can remember all of that very well. I used to watch Sir Alec Guinness, who is an absolute idol of mine, do everything. His rehearsals, his scenes, everything. It was fascinating. Not that I could hope to be as good as Guinness, but he is my ideal and my idol. Critics praised the screenwriter William Rose for his script, saying it was a first-rate example of British comedy that captures the world of British manners and tradition, which wouldn't ordinarily be a point, but given that Rose is an American, I think it's quite an interesting observation that he manages to play up what our. I guess we've lost some of it, but if we watch this film now, you'll still see traits of what is to be British. I'm talking about 1955's The Ladykillers, the, I guess, archetypal Ealing comedy. Would you like to say what it is that had an impact on you and why it holds such fond memories?
Yeah, Ladykillers was always one of those films that was just on telly in the background when I was growing up.
Yeah.
And then like in me formative years, I watched it properly. and I realised it was actually delightful and kind of there's not an ounce of fat on it, and it's just brilliant. And every performance is spot on, and it is kind of it's Britain under a microscope. It's post-war Britain under a microscope. It goes back further because Katie Johnson being quite old in it, and I think she died like a couple of years after it was made, and kind of just like these dotty old ladies dotting around doing their thing and being part of this. But like it's just kind of, and I watched it again in preparation for this, and I just thought it's just absolutely fantastic, and it's as good as I remember it. And kind of, it wasn't just rose tinted glasses; it was just like just looking at it and just going from second one, I was just like glued into it, and then and every performance is just brilliant as well. And it's kind of, they've got this kind of team of people doing the robbery. So Alec Guinness has got a team, and they've all got different identities, and they're all kind of, just doing their thing, but they're all given space to shine as well.
Yeah.
And it's just, I just kind of just love it. And I don't know what more I can say. I just would rave about it.
Well, what were you thinking about watching it as the thing that's just on the telly and it exists? Then sitting down to watch it where you're paying attention. If you've recently rewatched it, how much have you changed in terms of your view of how you see the film? Do you think? Because obviously we are the people that change. The film stays the same, but obviously our change is what changes the film as a thing we watch.
That's interesting. I don't know whether I've changed a lot since the last big watch of it, because I've got this like rotation of about 20 films which are on my top 10.
Okay.
I always do. And, there's stuff in there that, would I would probably only class as guilty pleasures now, like Dirty Harry, for example.
Yeah.
Is a great film, but like it's got some rough stuff in it now, and kind of question like it wouldn't be made now in the way that it's made, but it's still like good.
Yeah.
Film. But this was always one that was sitting in that list, so it was up there, in terms of the Britishness of it. It was something that was sitting there alongside like Trainspotting and kind of With Neil and I, where I think with both of those, I don't think they've got any ounce of fat on them as well. They're just kind of trim, perfect, kind of well constructed films. But this one is also like lovely as well, and it's finished the other night. I just thought that was just delightful. And if I was in a cinema, I'd be bouncing out of the cinema. and that's in a film where like the majority of the cast end up getting murdered at the end. Spoilers. Spoilers for a 70-year-old film.
And did just out of interest, what did you think of the Coen brothers remake of it? Did it add anything new to the magic of it, or?
I don't remember anything about it. I have seen it, but I don't remember much about it at all.
Yeah.
So I think there's a story there to be mined. And I was sitting watching it thinking, could someone make a UK remake of it now?
Yeah.
But then that question, why would you want to?
Yeah, because I mean, I guess you've got that post-war sort of zeal, and you've got a real British film industry, haven't you? Making pumping out movies. Really, you think of Ealing Studios, of which I guess it's almost like, oh, there goes the bell. I mean, they made a lot of films that obviously didn't leave the same kind of mark that Ladykillers did, but it's a bit like that thing. If you fire enough bullets, you'll hit targets in the end, and I think it almost feels like. There are many Ealing comedies that are thought of fondly, but I think it's almost like Ladykillers transcended Ealing comedy. It
feels like it to me. I think often it's not the one that everyone talks about as well. And I kind of think, well, actually, like it's so great. And I haven't watched like Lavender Hill more recently, or With Galore, or Passport to Pimlico, or whatever.
Yeah.
Like the other ones that kind of are up there.
Yeah.
But it just felt like so like absolute perfection watching it the other night, and just think this is like this could now be the one. I might have edged The Empire Strikes Back off the top of the list.
Really, in your revolving 20 films.
Yeah, but yeah, and I think that's in terms of the age thing. I think that's the shift. Is like that 20 films is the film that was number one 20 years ago is probably not the film that's number one now.
Yeah.
But in there. Just in the pecking order. Somewhere.
I like your very rational approach to having a favourite, where you accept that it's a revolving door, and therefore have a kind of. It's like you've got a Premier League squad where you pick your 11, and then you've got this other 13 or 14 that you can draft in if you've.
Yeah, I've got a deep squad of favourite films.
You've got a deep squad of top 10s. Well, look, we have come to the end of 3 films that have impacted everything in your adult life. Thank you for sharing those stories and those films, and thank you for telling us about your growth as a person who now works in distribution, having come from film curation and programming. Is there anything you want to add about what's going on with Tull Stories? There's anything that if you think about what's happening going towards the for the rest of 2025, what's big news for you into 2025?
I think just if any listeners want to check out tullstories.co.uk to see what's on there. I/we, whichever way I want to talk about it, I guess, is Tull Stories is releasing about 10 to 15 films a year at the minute, which is way too many for a little one-man band, but that's okay. And I think probably round about kind of the time this comes out, I would suspect that we'll have a horror film out in cinemas, which is a found footage horror film called It Doesn't Get Any Better Than This, which is out in October.
Fantastic.
And in cinemas then. So
can you tell us what the synopsis of that is? Just so give whet people's appetite.
Filmmakers buy a very dilapidated house in America to film their latest horror film in, and find out that there's something in the attic. Brilliant.
Well, look, I'll put links in the show notes to your website so people can check out listings as to where it's showing near them, hopefully. And it just gives me to say thank you very much for giving us your time on the Britflix podcast.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Do remember to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, follow on Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts for more movies that impacted your life. And if you want to, I'd love to know what your favourite movies are, what your fondest movie memories are. So please share your favourite movies that impacted your life on Twitter. Look for @LeightonRocks. And you can always leave me a review, 5-star preferably. And in your review, tell us which 3 films impacted your life. Best ones get read out on the podcast.
Hey there, Hugh from Podderation here. If you like today's show, why not check out Malt and Magic, a D&D podcast where things are almost literally homebrewed. Malt and Magic is a show that focuses on the immersive and collaborative natures of TTRPGs, working with a cast of amazing characters to create an epic hub where fantasy, mystery, sci-fi, horror, and cyberpunk all collide in one gripping, funny adventure. If you'd like to hear more, check out our website at podderation.com.